Good evening, everyone. I am absolutely thrilled to be here today to have this amazing opportunity to have a very important conversation that's really needed right now. With everything that's going on in our world, with all the racism and the things that just took place in the U.S., I have on the stage with me today three very important, high-profile, incredible individuals. And we're just going to take a time to have a conversation, and we're allowing you to join the conversation and to listen to this. I believe this is going to help somebody today. If you're discouraged, if you don't know where to turn, we want you to know that there is people that's very concerned about what's going on, and we want to be part of the solution and not the problem. I want to introduce some very special people to me personally and to our church. And the first person I want to mention is our very own mayor of Lachine, who lives right here close by our church, and the person of Maya. So Maya, we want to say thank you so much for being here today. God bless you. We know that you are very passionate for our community and for the Black community, and we really appreciate everything you're doing and trying to be part of the conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, she asked me to be part of this conversation because she really wants to listen and to hear and to be able to relate to the Black community, and I think we need to honor her today and to say thank you so much. Next, we have a person that most of the Resurrection family would know because he pastored with us here at the Resurrection Center for many years, and that's Pastor Bobby. So, Pastor Bobby, it's great to have you.
It's an honor to be here, Pastor.
Yes, thank you so much. And then there is Pastor Shannon, who is our current youth pastor here at the Resurrection Center, and we thank you, Shannon, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, God bless all of you. Thank you again. I want to lead into the conversation by just asking Pastor Bobby and Pastor Shannon first. Pastor Bobby, you grew up here in Montreal, in Lachine, and I wanted you to just talk a little bit about your experience as a Black person growing up here in Quebec.
Yes, so, well, first of all, like I said, thank you for having us.
It's our pleasure.
Yes. So what I always like to tell people is growing up as a Black young Christian man, you actually experienced three different births. So you have your natural birth where you're just born, and if you're a Christian, you accept Jesus Christ and you're born again.
Right.
And then you have another experience where you're born into being Black. You're really born again. And it's really a new birth, and I've asked so many of my friends about this, and they actually, all of us, most people of the Black community will tell you that they have this pivotal moment in their life where something happens, a very awkward moment happens, and then you realize, I'm Black. You have to go and see someone, and they point you to this direction. For example, when I was young, for me, it happened when I was 5. I was playing with one of my friends, and at some point, he said, well, you're Black. And I said, well, I'm not Black, I'm brown. And we spent, the whole afternoon arguing with crayons and just like, no, see, this is Black, this is brown, I'm brown. So, of course, I went home, I asked my father, my friend at school keeps on telling me that I'm Black, but I told him that I was brown. And my father had to sit me down and explain to me that I was actually Black and what it meant. Wow. And what it meant to be Black, what it means when you're called Black. And what's really crazy about this experience is when I was 5, I already knew that, I had to look into myself, this kind of self-discovery. It's like the emancipation of the self. Like I stood 3 minutes right there in front of the mirror looking at myself and telling myself, okay, I am Black. I am Bobby, yes, and my friend Alexander is Alexander, but I'm not like Alexander.
Okay, okay.
So throughout the whole growing up experience, this becomes kind of like this narrative that frames, my identity, that framed my identity.
Okay.
This constant question of what it means to be Black.
Okay.
Are you Black enough, or are you not Black enough?
Right.
Really going deep into that. So for me, this experience was really a discovery of self, and it was really introspection, a lot of introspection.
So standing in front of the mirror and trying to relate to I'm Black, is it a negative thing? Like, hey, there's something wrong with me?
It's not that it's negative. It's just surreal. Because it's not self.
Right.
It comes from the outside, you know, because if it was self, you would know. It's like when you're young, you discover yourself, you know, I like peanut butter.
Sure.
I know,
Sure.
I taste,
Sure.
I like.
Okay.
But this is really
that's
like,
very well
I have
said.
to accept something that I don't know.
Okay.
You know, so I know what it means to be a boy because I'm a
Yes.
boy and I feel like, you know,
Right.
I feel it inside. But being black is more of a gift that you have to learn about,
Okay.
to appreciate.
Very
but
well
then
said.
because of all the negative and pejorative connotation that comes with it, you understand that this is going to be a heavy necklace.
Okay.
That sometimes will feel like a chain.
Okay.
You know, this is going to be a heavy cross to bear, but it's going to be a throne. It's something very, very surreal. It's very something.
That is so
surreal.
well said. Thank you so much. That's such great insight. I want to come over to Shannon and get a response from her.
It was really good. It was a really good response, and you've added so much depth to it. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, definitely for myself, growing up black, I had that experience of like people telling you you're black as kids. Kids can be cruel. Kids can be blunt.
Of course.
Right? So
Yeah.
telling you that you're black and then you draw, right? Because kids use crayons and you draw yourself and the black doesn't look right. And you draw it with brown and that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
And having that
Wow.
conversation with why do they call us black? We're brown. You know what I'm
Okay.
saying? And even having that like that distance in your own mind where you're like, that doesn't make sense. These things don't coincide. But something that Pastor Bobby had mentioned that I think is so key is he said framing identity. And I think for young black people or growing up black in Montreal, I think our blackness is framed in different ways.
Okay.
That builds a context to how we relate with it and what we think of it and how we believe other people look at us in relation to it.
Okay.
We have the frame that comes from our family, which is usually positive, right? You have a frame that comes from experience that could be positive or negative, depending on where it comes from. I went to an
Sure.
elementary school where I had the fortunate ability to have myself represented in faculty, not teaching faculty, but support staff.
Okay.
And they created a safe place for a lot of the black students. And I remember actually distinctively, I went to St. Monica's. There was another elementary school called, I think, John 23 or something to that extent. And their faculty came over.
Okay.
And their faculty was very black.
Okay.
And it kind of changed the game. You know what I'm saying? It kind of made an even playing field where I felt like I had someone for me. You know,
Okay.
had someone for me in that
So you could
environment
relate.
that I can relate to, that understood me culturally,
Okay.
that understood me emotionally, that you know what I mean? And yeah, that framing can either be like a picture frame where a photo is, you know, celebrated, or it could feel like a frame, like Pastor Bobby said, that has that duality where it could feel like a prison, you know, depending on who's telling you about your blackness.
Right.
And we've all had that negative experience, unfortunately, where someone tells you about your blackness in a way where they're not appreciating the culture, they're not appreciating how we are represented. They're misrepresenting the blackness and telling us
Right.
about who we are or about what blackness means or what it is based on their understanding. And because a lot of the times this is coming from people who hold a dominant place in society, it kind of that dynamic kind of superimposes on the positive things that we feel about ourselves.
Okay.
So now you've created an inner speech,
Right.
right, that is inherently evil.
Yeah.
And I feel this about myself because
So it's very unhealthy.
it's unhealthy. We always have to do this balance where we see the negative about blackness, but we have to try and remind ourselves of the positive about blackness and try and hold on to that so
Right.
deeply.
And do you feel that it comes more from without than within?
I think that we were talking about elementary school, we're talking about
Yes.
childhood experiences. I
Right.
think that unfortunately it starts without, but it's learned so early that it camouflages as within.
Okay.
That's my personal opinion, because I don't think children learn self-talk from the way they're treated by the people around them.
Of course.
So, you know, that's just what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I hear you correctly, is it safe to say that it's very important for the educational systems to make sure that they have people teaching children of different races.
Yeah, I definitely think that. I think representation matters. I think that people, children, when you ask a kid, what do you want to be?
Right.
You know, you're asking them that based on a profession, but unfortunately, depending on what they've been exposed to, that might limit what they feel like they can be.
Oh, that's powerful.
You know?
Yeah, it's
so
true.
yeah, I don't know if you want to add to that, but for me, I feel like definitely we need to reevaluate how if our education system is really even and fair to all minority groups and to all people who attend.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think there is something to be said when it comes to education, because if you're going to discover about yourself, then you have to go within history.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I was taught that I was black, it didn't start with the ancient kings of Africa.
That's right.
It started with, well, see, there was a time where we were in one place in Africa, then we entered slavery. You know,
Okay.
I'm fortunate because my parents come from the island of Haiti.
Right.
You know, so it has a rich heritage when it comes to freedom and liberation in the whole
Right.
slavery movement, or the abolition of slavery movement. You know, however, the current situation looks otherwise. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So yes, this constant questioning can be improved if there's proper education.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, if you're taught the good side, if you're taught really your true history, your full history,
Mm-hmm.
you know, if I'm going to be called black, what does it mean? What's
Right.
its limit, and what are the highs, what are the lows, and especially what's the history? You know, what does it
Right.
mean right now?
Yeah.
You know, so history is important. Representation. I was not fortunate to be in schools where there was any people of minorities. I was taught mostly with from people from European descent. I was often the only minority in my class, and it makes a difference. You know, the first
does.
time I saw a black professor that taught me, I think was in CEGIP.
Okay.
No, in CEGIP, in CEGIP I had minorities teaching me, and my first black, quote unquote, a person of African descent that was really teaching me was actually only in university. You know, so yeah, it frames you're excited. You're like, wow, what
Yeah.
did you do?
Really, huh?
Yeah.
What can I do to do what you did to get where you are?
Yeah, definitely. You know?
Okay.
Definitely. It's like,
Okay.
it's fun. Mm-hmm.
With all the things that we've seen transpire in the U.S. over the last couple of weeks, how are you personally and then the black community addressing the tension that's in the room almost everywhere we go now? There's a lot of tension. How are you managing this personally?
Personally, you know, it's what's been going on inside is now a storm for everybody to see.
Right.
You know, so
Okay.
now everybody is aware.
Okay.
So of course there's it gives you that kind of freedom, or to this free pass, not this pass, but this kind of freedom to be a bit more comfortable to have these dialogues.
Okay.
You know, because now
But that's a positive, right?
that is a positive, you know. At the same time, it's been like this for such a long time,
Right.
that now that we're having a conversation, there's this sense of, there's even this sense of frustration, first of all, because it's like, really? Nobody was aware? Like, nobody saw this because we saw it, and so
Sure.
nobody was seeing this?
Sure.
And then this other level of, oh, now we should do something about it? Like,
Right.
You
That's
know?
good.
and then there's a third level of just, you remember 40 and 50 years ago,
Right.
you killed people because they were talking about it, and you know, you promised that we were going to make a change. Now we're here, and we're having these same conversations.
Yeah.
Are we really
yeah.
Are we really going to make a change? You know, so it brings this kind of sense of like, yes, let's do something, but this also level of, okay, well, this time, if we're going to do something, let's evaluate. Let's evaluate if we're doing the right thing, number one. Number two, let's hold our communities accountable to keep on doing what the first
Of course,
generations
yes.
were doing when the movement was starting and
Right.
people were starting to learn about this kind of injustices that were going on social level. And then let's keep hope alive. Let's not become hopeless because, oh, see, nothing is changing.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, let's celebrate the wins really as much as possible, and let's take this as an opportunity to continue the conversation, you know, because now more people are engaged. There's still some resistance, but more people are ready to have this conversation, you know. So let's just forgive the fact that some were not ready. Now we're dealing with the now, and that's important, you know.
Yeah. And Shannon, how are you managing the tension, and also how do you feel the Black community is managing the tension?
I read this really beautiful post that made no sense, and that's why it was beautiful.
Okay.
Because it mentioned that I'm sad, and then I'm crying, and then I'm frustrated, and then I'm happy, and then I'm laughing, and I'm joyful, and then I'm confused and disheartened, and then
Wow.
and then they ended all of this list of emotions. You would think maybe weeks, and they said in 1 minute. And that's exactly how I feel the Black community feels. It's moments of, we still need to live, so we want to feel joy, but we can't actually feel joy. You know what I mean? Because of everything that's happening, and it's sad and it's frustrating, and I don't hate white people. I have white family. I worship with white people.
Right.
I go to school with white people. I've lobbied for other situations with
Right.
white people. You know what I mean? This is my community. This is where I live. This is where I exist. This is where I breathe. And it's frustrating that I have felt your pain, but you can't feel mine. And I think that, like Pastor Bobby said, even though that this is happening, there's a feeling of, oh, now you care. There's a feeling of how have you never noticed this? And I think for me, unfortunately, you know, it's okay. If these things had happened with more distance in between, I think it would be a lot easier for me to have desensitized myself to it, because that numbness is like an anesthetic for the pain that we constantly feel as Black people, being murdered, being killed, being mistreated because of our skin color. Now, because they've happened back to back to back, there's been no opportunity for mourning. There's been no opportunity to make sense of it.
And the community needs to go through that grieving period.
Yes, and not that it ever made sense, but
Sure.
just to reason with ourselves the way we've been taught to reason with ourselves for
Right.
survival purposes. Because what you feel helpless in, you understand, you learn to live with. And so now people can't live with it, and there's been that nagging frustration of why now? And then when you see why people are speaking up now, it's because of damage to property and not because of damage to bodies.
Wow.
And that is where the most
Wow.
insult comes
That's
in.
very profound.
Wow.
You know, it's because
Wow.
you care now. You care now
Because it's affecting me
because
now.
I'm impacting
Yeah.
impacting your capital and your investments.
Wow.
You know, and there's
Never saw that coming.
but it's the truth, and the unfortunate part is there's a group of believers, and there's a group of allies that have spoke against the people that they say they love,
Right.
in insisting that this is not okay, rather than they will speak out against rioting before they speak out against murder.
Right.
And so I am not here to co-sign behavior or not behavior, because that's not what this is about.
Absolutely.
And I don't feel like we're gonna do this thing where we try to trap each other or trap our counterparts in conversations, you know what I mean, to cast
Thank you.
blame. But
That's well said.
what I think is important to highlight is that, you know, you cannot speak to my anger if you do not address my pain. And as believers specifically, not necessarily in politics, but as believers specifically, we are taught the ministry of healing.
Yes.
We are taught the ministry of addressing the root of the issue. And then we will deal with the branches. We are
Right.
taught that we minister to the hearts, and then that will, you know, out of that will flow behavior modification. But what we're asking people to do through the way that we're speaking on the issue a lot of times is modify your behavior,
Yeah.
and then we'll deal with the problems.
Yeah.
Protest peacefully, and then we'll deal with the problems. You know, be quiet, and then we'll have a conversation. And
Wow.
it doesn't even make sense when you say it out loud, but this is what we're
Yeah.
expecting people to do and to feel, not remembering that when we were quiet, you still murdered us. You know, when the last time we had, when Martin Luther King was here and they had the civil rights sit-ins, we weren't damaging property. We became the property that we allowed people to damage. They were throwing things at us and beating us as we sat at tables.
Right.
Right?
Right.
We were the property. We were the ones that are being rioted to so that we can have change. We allowed ourselves to be abused so that we can have change, and now we're abusing property.
Right.
And you're upset.
Right.
But when we were silent, you didn't hear us, you didn't see us, we were invisible. So this is how I've been feeling, and this is how I feel a lot of
That
Black
really
youth have
helps.
been feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, we're not looking for behavior modification. We're looking for transformation.
Exactly.
As a society, yeah, that's
Yeah.
what we need to have. Definitely.
And I think when we talk about faith, that's what faith should do. Faith is not behavior modification.
No.
It's actually transformation. And
yeah.
our world and our lives need to be transformed. And for me, I believe the only way we can truly be transformed is through Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And to add to that, the only way that we can have transformation is to have honesty, to
yes,
have conversations.
of course.
Because
Absolutely.
transformation is not perfection. We're not
Yes.
asking everything to be perfect. We're asking for things to change.
Wow, that's really good, Shannon.
Yeah.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
Bobby, I feel like you're ready to you want to go and say something.
No, I was going to say that, you know, and also the reasons why all of a sudden this becomes so important is because it's really because of this pandemic.
Right.
People are sitting home.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, what was a burden for us to experience every day becomes, you know, what's new on the news?
Yes.
What?
What?
Again?
Yeah.
Well, this doesn't make
Sure.
sense, you know. And I find also that still today, what's really hard and frustrating is we have the luxury right now to have a dialogue and a conversation.
Right.
But normally throughout life, the Black community doesn't have the luxury to have dialogue about,
Sure.
please,
I believe that.
see
I
me
see
as
that.
a person.
Yeah.
I see that.
See me as a human. Like,
Yeah.
you know, it's if you have, like, squirrels don't have to argue in the forest for
Yeah.
their identities. Like, I'm a squirrel. Come on,
Yeah,
guys.
that's right.
Like, look at me,
Everybody
I'm
knows a squirrel.
You know,
Yeah.
I have rights to. You know, squirrels don't argue with other squirrels about
Yeah,
that.
that's
You know,
right.
you've never seen a
That's-
lion just
that's-
argue. I'm a
that's
lion.
great.
You know,
Yes.
but we as human beings, it's kind of like, I'm a human being. Come on now, come on. Like, I walk, I
believe-
dress more like you now. I speak more like you. I
Right.
speak proper. I'm not talking too much about myself. I'm not making a ruckus. You know, I mean, our whole identity is framed of, am I acceptable now? Am I acceptable now? So this is really like, you know what? I'm not going to be acceptable. This is not working, because I'm still getting murdered just for the fun of it now. I'm jogging.
Right.
I'm just jogging.
Yeah.
You told me that it was good for me to jog. Like,
Yes,
you know,
that's right.
this whole
Yes.
dialogue. Like, I'm just trying to be normal.
Just trying to be normal.
You know. So this is really a time of unrest. You know.
Right.
But I think everybody feels it too.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I
I know for me personally, I mean, I did, and we were having this conversation earlier about watching or not watching the video. In fact, both videos. And I'm a watcher, so I watched, and I was physically sick. I was shocked. So I had a lot of emotions too, because you all know my world. I'm very connected to the Black community, and I feel called, and I love the Black community. And I was just shocked, but I never realized it was going to take us here. And one of my personal fears is that we just forget this in a month or two.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that something that you guys are concerned about?
I'm not concerned. I expect it.
You
I don't
expect
think,
it.
I expect our society to try to go back to normal. So I expect our society to go back to what it's supposed to be, to
Right.
what it's supposed to feel, but it's not supposed to be like that. But
No,
I
understand.
You know, that's the
Yes,
behavior that
true.
I expect from society.
Yeah.
What I do not accept is for those that are speaking right now not to make the proper changes that need to be
Right.
made. You know,
Yeah.
that is. But I do expect, the people that don't care, did not care, will not care. Because there hasn't been a transformation yet. The simple fact that we still see each other as different races means that we
Right.
don't understand that we're the same human race.
Yeah.
Ah.
So the simple fact that we're not going to make that effort to say we're all from one human race and this is really just a shade of skin and the truth of
Right.
it is, we have different ethnicities, because there's no reason to really define somebody and tell them and
By
tell
their color.
by their color. There's no reason.
Absolutely.
If you want to encounter someone,
Yeah.
truly encounter a soul,
Yeah.
you need conversation.
Right.
So the color really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If I want to discover something about you, I need this encounter. Your ethnicity can tell me about your history, but still I need this encounter.
To tell
But
me
what
who
we've
you are.
made,
Yeah.
but what we've made is we've attached a history to a skin color. Forgetting that it was actually a wrong history. So, yeah, that would be my take when it comes to,
Right.
to that.
I don't think so. I agree. I hear you. Not on your explanation of that. That's all factual. What I said when I say I don't agree, I mean I think we're at the cusp of something here, and I think we've been granted the privilege of COVID-19 to be part of social reconstruction. And I think because life as we know it will never be as we knew it,
Yeah.
Right.
we have an opportunity to reform everything. We have an opportunity to be like, okay, well, and you guys would not be privy to this, but I am privy to the fact that there is this whole trend right now in Montreal happening within the Black community where they're exposing a lot of sexual offenders
Okay.
on social media. And people who have experienced this pain is speaking out. Now,
Right.
what's happening now is that everybody who has a cause and a plight in the Black community, they're now saying, well, if this matters, then this matters.
Right.
And if this matters, then this matters. And if that matters, then that matters. And if we're going to change this, we're going to change everything. And I think that we will never be the same. And because people know we will never be the same, this is an opportunity to change this as well. And I don't think things are going to go back to normal when it comes to social hierarchy, when it comes to race relations. I think that this is an opportunity for reconciliation. I think this is an opportunity for things to have some real engraved policy-driven change. And I don't know how long it's going to take, but I don't think, like, I know, like, in French Quebec, they say, like, longe pas la patate. Like, I
Yeah,
really feel like
yeah.
this is not something that we're going to be letting go of. I don't think so, because new school is not like old school, and these young kids are angry.
Things go.
They're angry, and I don't know what, I know, like, I know we're speaking from like the same end, but like kind of, maybe I'm just hopeful. I don't know. But
I am
just,
as well. I'm
I
very
just-
hopeful.
yeah.
I'm looking at the reality
Yeah.
and the factual. And the facts are that this takes a lifetime.
Yeah.
And it's going to take several generations. This whole systemic racism is like the theory that most scholars have been using is really this theory of the glass of milk. So if you have a glass and you pour milk in it, you pour out the milk and then you put water, you're not going to drink the water straight away.
Right.
Because you're still going to see the residues.
Yeah.
Now, if you put water again, you're still going to see the residues. If you put water again, you might still see a bit of residues. You need to clean the glass and
Right.
Yeah.
in order to. So we're like at the first, maybe the
Yeah.
second, like pouring of water.
You're right.
So I'm not saying that it's not gonna change. No, everything has changed. That's also factual. But it's good for us to understand that this will not take place in 2021. You will not have a different world all of a sudden. Yes, you will, like philosophically speaking, but some of these issues are going to take time, and it's okay for them to take time. We don't want to rush this. This is a foundation. This is a foundation of something important. So you don't want to rush the foundation. You know what I mean? And I think that if we add that to the dialogue, then it brings up more hope. It lets us know, okay, the work is actually harder. The separation, the gap is actually larger than we thought. This is a deep hole. There's a lot of hurt.
It is.
Because from the other side, how unfair it is for, like I said, Alexander, my friend. How unfair it is for Alexander to have the this kind of burden of my ancestors did this, but not my ancestors, but like people that look like my ancestors did this. You know what I mean? Like they enslaved people in the United States, but I'm here in Quebec and my life was not that nice
Right.
while this was going on. You know what I mean? So there is this hurt globally that needs to be addressed with what all of our ancestors have done with this whole thing. So it takes a lot. It takes a lot more than just like 1 year, 2 years. But I do believe, I'm with you when it says things are going to change. They have to.
Wow. That's deep.
He has the political answer. I have
That's a lot to think
the
about. Thank
grassroots
you
answer.
both so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Did you take us into the life of a black person on a daily routine? Is racism something that you experience as a black person almost every day of your life?
You want to go first?
Sure. No, this is such an interesting question because I think that a lot of people can be easily misled into believing it's not. Because you don't have someone who overtly treats you horribly because you're black every corner.
Okay.
Because that's just that's not even socially acceptable in Quebec. Like,
Yeah.
you
Right.
know what I mean? It happens, but it doesn't happen that often.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
in Montreal anyways. Montreal is like a cosmopolitan, like, you know what I mean? However, when we're looking at the systemic inequalities, we live in a system. So we experience those things every day.
Okay.
I'm not like my own nation. I don't get to operate outside of the systems that Quebec and Montreal has put into place.
Right.
The social contracts and norms that we say this is how we live, and but these systems, these underlying systems, the education systems, financial systems, economic systems, all of these things have been created in a way that it puts some people at a disadvantage. I am one of them. So yes, I do experience these kind of things. Like when I drive down the street in Chateauguay, you know what I mean? I have this feeling like, let me make sure I drive just under the speed limit because I know, because I've experienced it,
Right.
you know what I mean, that I have a higher chance of being pulled over.
Right.
You know what I mean? I know I look suspicious. I know that they're going to be running my plate to see if there's anything wrong, even if I'm driving the speeding limit. You know what I
Right.
mean? And that's just my reality. And so, yes, I do feel that every day. I don't feel safe when I see police driving down the street.
You don't, huh?
I don't. I absolutely don't. Maybe Pastor Bobby might feel different. I don't feel safe. I feel threatened when they drive down my street. I'm like, why are you here? Because I have not often seen you do anything positive for me.
Right.
So why would I have a welcoming stance towards you when you come around? I don't. I have seen positive police interactions. I've had police come to my, I think, high schools. I've had
Right.
police come. I think we've even had officers here at this
Yes,
church.
true.
So we have good police officers in our communities.
Right.
They just don't happen to always be the ones that are policing
Right.
all the time. And so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I would echo what you're saying, and I think that once you go through this awakening that I'm a human being first,
Right.
before I am black, and you push that idea, then you make the conscious choice not to celebrate racism that takes place every day, because like you said, the system is the system.
Yeah.
Right.
So we're in the system. It's going to happen.
Okay.
I choose not to celebrate it. What I mean by celebrate is I will disregard
Right.
what offends, and I will address the injustice in it. So I will not be fazed by a look that I know comes from,
Yeah.
look at this black man.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or I will choose not to frame my mind just around that. Like you have to, because at some point you create that narrative. You see a woman clenching her purse, and you're like, oh, maybe I'm
black.
scaring her.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because I'm black. Until you realize she's actually falling and you're not helping her. So you know what I mean? Like, wake up.
Right.
So I choose not to celebrate, and I think that in the system's point of view, yes, that's just the way it is. But personally, you have to make the conscious choice of like, I will address the injustice that is made to a human being, but I will disregard and not celebrate whatever is made to,
Right.
because it's at a lower level. At this point, what am I going to teach you? You
You
know?
already chose.
Yeah, you already, it's beneath me at this point.
Wow. So I think you probably have already addressed some of this, but do you think us as a society is ready now to accept some level of change and push forward socially, governmentally? And I'm sure Maya is going to weigh in on this, but what are you hopeful for? Like, what does this look like?
Well, first of all, to address the first question, it's do you have a choice? Like,
Yeah.
the society have a choice now? Yeah, I mean, this is happening. Like, so
Right.
Ready or
this
not.
is happening right now. It's happening. So there's no choice to be ready.
Okay.
And I do believe that, like Shannon was saying earlier, society will. Those that don't won't.
Right.
They were never meant
So
to.
you just got to accept it.
Yes, we have to start this. This is how human beings survive. We survived like this for years.
Right.
This is how we're still here. You know, we are a race. The human race is a race that will learn to adapt.
Yes.
No matter the circumstances, we learn to adapt, and we make the changes that we need to make.
Okay.
And we understand the importance of the value of humanhood. We understand that. So at some point, we have to let some people go. It sounds
Could I
brutal.
stop you for a sec? When you say we understand the value of life, I believe you're referring to us as a society. Is that correct? Or
I'm referring to those of us who understand the sanctity of life and
Okay.
of humanhood. Those that don't,
Right.
like those that are looking right now or listening to this are just like, well, I don't know. For me, life, whatever,
Okay.
people, whatever. I like people. Some people I don't like, whatever.
Okay.
Then they're not there. Then they have to go. Like at some point, they will be left behind. It's not that we're like letting them away. They will not be part of the conversation
Okay.
that makes the decision, but it's going to be our responsibility to educate and to teach. So we can't take everybody into that level of let's think higher, but we could definitely open the opportunity to
Right.
teach, And those that do not want, there's another level where we'll encourage,
Right.
And those that make a decision, then they will leave. You know what I
can't
mean?
teach the unteachable, right?
Exactly. So there's several levels to that, and I think that this society is gonna find a way to really do that. I think the burden though on the black communities right now is a good one. I think that what's going on will help us to see the importance of doing some things, but more at a grassroots level inside of our communities.
Right.
Taking care of each other as well.
Yes.
And honoring who we are within the communities as well.
I know from having conversations with our mayor here in Lachine that there are some efforts being made with regards to our local city officials and our police departments. Maya, would you like to speak to some of that?
It's hard to speak now. I'm a bit speechless. I want to tell you, I've been listening very carefully to what you said, and I feel incredibly privileged to be literally between you two. I'm between incredible privilege. Not only do I hear you, I feel you. I want to tell you, you talk about the system, and you talk about the system as it was something over there. The system, you're part of the system. You're part of it. You choose right now to have very little power by just going to vote. I presume you vote. I think you vote. So you go vote. Yeah, you vote. So you choose that power. But you can have so much more power. You can be part of that system and change the system. It is quite easy because I have a political association and it's open to all. And you can come and tell me what you want to do, and and we're there to listen, and there's no people of color that come, and even though the door is open, so if you want to do that, they're part of the system,
Right.
and you choose not to be. I want you to choose to be, because the door is open.
So this is
The
like
door
an
is
invitation.
open.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is an invitation, because
Right.
it's you talk about Jesus.
Yes.
There's faith, and Martin
Yes.
Luther King had faith, but he also did more than faith. He led a
Sure,
movement.
of course, of course.
He led a movement through faith.
Right.
And I think it's time to step up. And the police is looking for people of color to be part of them. They're going out to CJEPs. They're going out. They're seeking out. We don't want to be just white and unrepresentational. We want to be representational. Come on board with us. Our political party is looking for representation. Come on board with us. I'm listening to you speak and I'm going, oh my God, like, oh my God. What intellect, what humanity, what power, what good, like you can do this. You can create the change you want to happen. Maybe you can do it more through church. It's up to each individual. Some do it more through science, through art. I mean, I'm in politics, so of course I preach for my own thing.
Sure, sure.
I want you all on board, but it's the thing that I often feel that people think the system is something that's far when it's not.
When it's very close.
It's not. The system is us. Yeah. It's right there. It's like we had a meeting here at the Bishop Burton let us when I wanted to become mayor, and I mean, who am I? I'm an artist and a painter. I never thought I'd be a mayor, never. And I needed to have a meeting with some of the people and to decide what party we're going to join, what are we going to do, and I didn't know where to go. And we came here. We had a little room, so it's just as close as a little room here, getting together, organizing change, proposing change. And I mean, and our party has done, I don't know, I don't want to talk too much.
It's okay. It's important.
Yeah. Our party has done, we're not perfect. No one's perfect, as this change takes time. But the Human Rights Commission in 2010 suggested that we should do check how many people get checked, racial profiling. Yeah. Let's see the numbers. Let's see the stats. Let's stop talking about it abstractly. Let's see the numbers.
Sure.
And Montreal always refused to do it.
Right.
The police department refused to do it. And our party pushed for it. And now it's been done. And the numbers are out. And black people are stopped 5 times more.
5 times more?
5 times more.
Wow.
And that has to be addressed, and the police wants to address it.
Right.
The police itself says we have to do something about that. But we're talking about it more in Montreal. It's uncomfortable, right? It's uncomfortable.
Causes tension.
But at least we're talking about it. We're open.
Right.
And also the police commission. There's a security commission at the City of Montreal.
Right.
It was always done behind closed doors. And now it's open. Every month there's an open session where anybody, you can go and ask a question.
Right.
You can go and say, why is this? Why isn't it this way? I propose this. Why don't you adopt this? So those are all things that have changed that you can, and then you can propose more changes. But I can't do that. Like, I can, but I don't feel, I'm not you.
Sure.
I'm not you.
Sure.
So you are the one with all that knowledge. You are the one that can talk about it, that can express it, that...
Yeah, and so, I think that speaks a lot about that burden that I was talking about, like that burden that is now placed on the black community. There's an understanding that's going to be, and this is why I say it's going to take a long time, because there's an understanding, like if I would ask Shannon, how do you feel if that now that you're told that you have the opportunity, the first thing that we might hear from Shannon is not, well, great, let me take it now. It's just like, really?
Really?
Yeah.
And
this really is explained by this kind of mental prison. So if I put you in a room, all right, and I don't tell you the concept of a door.
Right.
I don't show you the door. I don't even tell you the concept of a door or the concept of a window. I don't need to lock the doors and lock the windows.
Right.
You're in prison.
Yes, yes.
You understand?
Yes.
So it's not even a question of like, is the information available? Is it not available? Can I seek it or not? There's an educational level that needs to be done grassroots, to really teach. And this is where representation at higher level makes a huge difference. Because then it's like, I can see that this professor is, brown just like me. He seems to have the same ethnic background as me, but he has a PhD after his name. What's that? And can I do it too? You know, because I see it, you know? Now also, when the community gets involved, for example, you create this dialogue, this platform, do you know how many people just heard your voice saying this? You know?
Right.
So this becomes something like, well, now I don't have a choice. I know that there's access. You know what I mean? So this is teaching the concept of doors and the concept of windows within that room.
But just because an invitation is extended does not mean that you feel safe to accept the invitation.
You know what? At this level, it might be true, but then the onus is on you.
Okay,
Number one, the onus is
that's
on
fair.
you to create this place where, okay, I will find the strength and the courage, and then there's a dialogue where I'll explain to you where I'm safe, where I'm not safe. You know,
Okay.
and we have the same kind of dynamic when it comes to gender dynamics.
Right.
You know, I was speaking to my wife about it, and we were discussing different times to go jogging and stuff like that. And I told her, you know, why don't you just, you know, I could jog around this hour and that hour of the day, and she was telling me, well, no, I need to jog between this, you know, in the morning around you know 5:15 and 6, etc. And I was just like, but why are you so specific? She was just like, because I can't jog when the sun comes down like that. I don't feel safe.
Okay.
You know what I mean? There's a different safety. So how do I create this safety? How do we create an environment of safety when it comes to gender? There's a different dialogue to have. Well, it's the same thing when it comes to different ethnicities. Well,
Right.
I will feel safer if ever we do this. But as soon as we hear the door is open, what is going on right here, this is the concept of the door, the concept of the window. Now at least you know that there's a way out.
Okay.
So find out if it's locked.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, touch the doorknob.
Yeah.
You know, because now you have the opportunity to know that there's a way out, and people are just waiting, like,
Yeah.
come out. You know what I
Sure.
mean? And eagerly waiting, I can see.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
eagerly.
and
waiting.
I'd like to share a story.
Yes,
'cause
go ahead.
I had somebody in my team I asked her to, she was a beautiful woman, incredibly intelligent, had not a PhD, had a master's degree in economics, had a great job, wonderful family, everything. And I said, why don't you come and run with me, be on my team? And she was a woman of color
Right.
from Africa. I said, come, you're like amazing. And she said, it took her a long time. It takes women a lot longer to decide yes or no, 2 months, three times more than men. And but she said, at the end, she said, no, I don't want to run. She says, because I will lessen your chances of winning. I said, are you crazy? You won't, like, you're amazing. And, you know, you'll be great on a poster, you know? And she was like, oh, no, I can't. I will make you not win. Yeah. And I couldn't convince her. So it's not just, she knew the door was open, but she didn't want to go through that door because of and I think what was very interesting about what you said is that your identity comes, the black identity, from the outside. I find that incredible. Like that and you want to do something at universities where they teach black history and that it's funded, that it's a whole department, so that you have a view of black history from true history, from the good part, like the excellent part of all that black history that you can carry within you and define yourself from within and not from without, so that you can have that strength to say, look who I am, look what we've accomplished, this is what we will accomplish more. You know, we need that. You need that strength to do it, because you're not, I hear you, and you're up there.
Right.
Like you're up there. You're totally fit for any position.
Shannon, I would love for you to address the comment that our mayor, Maya, just made with regards to the well-educated, beautiful black lady who was invited to be part of her party, but she declined. How does that make you feel, and how would you respond to that as another beautiful, black, educated woman?
Thank you for the compliment.
You're welcome.
I'll take it. No, I would say, I want to say 2 things to that. I want to say thank you for saying that the doors are open. Because as Pastor Bobby was talking about with the concept of the door, it's like, you know, sometimes we don't have the framework to understand that there is space for us, you know, and we don't even understand the space. So even when the space is made, because there's no framework there, it's like, I don't want to go in there because it's not a safe space. You know what I mean? Or I don't want to go in there because I don't want to fail. You know, I don't want to go in there because I don't want to feel another wave of rejection. I don't want my efforts to be wasted. Oh, it's not going to work anyways. You know what I mean? And there's that apathy that's been created, or part of that is also an apathy that's been created as a self-defense mechanism to the rejection that we've felt prior generations before, that we've been taught. You know what I mean? That happens because of the color of our skin. And so I think to use that apathy to speak to this woman who was beautiful and educated and qualified, I think despite these things, if we're talking about frameworks here and understanding the door, despite all of our qualifications, there is an imposter syndrome that happens. And what imposter syndrome is where you feel like an imposter even though you have rights to a place because you don't look like everyone else. And Black women experience a very high, I mean, if you look at statistics within North America, Black women are some of the most likely to graduate, right? We're super qualified, we're super educated. Yes. But then you don't see us represented in a lot of areas of society, right? Why? That imposter syndrome teaches against us because we go to school to become qualified, but the framework of our identity and Blackness is not always addressed and dealt with. So you have the qualifications that you got because you wanted a place and you wanted a position, but when you get that door opened and the key is given access to, you know, that concept of my Blackness is going to hinder me, fights it. So there's this fight that happens. You know I'm qualified. I know I went to school, but I just still don't feel enough because of this Blackness that feels like you can't understand, and it cages me. I don't think you'll ever see me for my qualifications. You'll just see me for what I look like. I don't really feel like, and I've had this conversation with Black women, right, where they're aching in pain because they're going to work and, you know, they're being called shenanes, or they're being talked to or spoken to with, you know, urban speech and colloquialisms that people shouldn't really, that's not part of their culture, right? Yeah. But right. You try to relate to me through the culture that you've understood, and I'm actually operating outside of that culture right now because I've gotten the education. So I've learned to be another person, but you're still treating me like the people that you've seen on TV. You're still treating me with the limited experiences that you've had with the Black people outside of this professional environment. So now I don't know what to do. Do I act more Black? You know, do I act more Black to fit your understanding of me, or do I act professional to fit the environment that I'm in? Right. And then if I don't perform in a way that makes you comfortable, I'm seen as a threat. Not you, Maya, but I'm saying this is how we felt. I'm seen as a threat, or I'm seen as rude, or I'm seen as dismissive because I refuse to adhere to the social contract that you're trying to create with me in this space. And so this imposter system is very frustrating because we know we're qualified, but we still feel like there's no space for who we've become. Our qualifications have created an identity that the corporate world is not ready for. That's what I would say to that.
Can I add to that?
Yes, sure. Please.
The imposter syndrome, you have to embrace it. Everyone feels it. Everyone feels it. You're not alone in that. So it's every time you go up somewhere, you're like, oh, am I really? You know, I replaced a man that was in office.
You could speak to that for sure.
I was the first woman to be elected mayor of Lachine in 350 years.
350 years.
And before that was a man that was very much, you know, white, French Canadian, very respected. Yes. You know, had a big chair, had a throne, and you know. And I said, I'm not. That's I think I can. It was actually here at church when I came to visit you for political reasons, I guess. Right. And we spoke, and I said, I'm thinking about, running, and I feel like it's just a sacrifice. Like I'm going to sacrifice myself because I probably won't win. Like I'm running against this very experienced man, but I can't be with him. Like it's wrong, and I have to. And you were the first one to say, well, you should run then. Why don't you run? And I was like, huh? But it's a sacrifice for me to run. Like I will lose. And you said, well, if you think it's a sacrifice, then it's the right reason to do it. So if you believe in something enough and you think this is the right thing and you go for it, even if you feel you're going to fail, you should go for it. And you'd be surprised because not many people actually go for it or feel enough for something to go for it. So I thought there's certain things, I didn't want to be mayor. I just thought certain things needed to be done. And look, it allows me to be here today, you know?
Right.
Like, wow, I feel like super privileged. So being in that position allows me to hear, I see it my job is very different. My job description to myself is not the job description, I think, of the man that I replaced. So I'm not him. I'm not his, you know, I would be an imposter if I try to act like him, but I'm me.
Wow. Okay, that's very powerful.
It is.
Yeah, so you're not trying to be like anybody else.
And I think that, thank you for saying that, because I think that you sharing that story, what it translates to me anyways, is that you stand in solidarity with Black women that have that same experience. And I think that it's important for more people that don't belong to the Black community to admit that they also feel that feeling of being an imposter. Because if we all feel like we're imposters, that means that means we all belong.
A lot of things in
we all
common,
feel like
right?
imposters. We all know, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Right.
Exactly. We have a lot more in common than we don't.
Yes.
And I think that, man, I just wish there was a Maya at the gate of so many different places, because I feel like if there was more people that felt what you feel and think the way you think, that become gatekeepers, we would have so much more people, so much more representation in different areas of society. But unfortunately, there's not people all the time that's willing to say, you know, hey, I feel like that too, and I still think you should do it. You know what I mean? Or to say, I mean, in the case of the young woman, she felt like she would, you know, like slow down, hinder. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. She felt like she would hinder your party. I feel like, I don't know why she didn't do it, but I think the fact that she didn't do it now at least will create space for someone else to do it and know that, hey, even if I feel the way she felt, I need to persist.
Yeah. And I'd like to add something else,
Sure.
is that you don't need to feel shame for not doing it. You know, like
Of
you
course.
said, you
Of
said
course.
maybe you're not ready.
Yes.
A lot of people are not ready. You know, a lot of people say, well, this should change, but they don't go out and change it. You know, like many, many, many people.
But there's
So-
a very low percentage of people that have the tenacity to do what you have done and what needs to be done. Somebody's got to be the sacrifice. And I mean, as a person of faith, we know who was the ultimate sacrifice, which was Jesus. So, you know, but in order for change to take place and become permanent, somebody has got to go first. And I believe the Black community has a great foundation. I don't think we're building from scratch. Because if you look back through history, ladies and gentlemen, you that's watching this today, there's been great sacrifices already. Yeah. And I'm not saying that we're ahead far enough and we should be content. That's not what I'm implying at all. But I don't think there's no foundation. There's a lot of sacrifices that's been made, not enough on our part as a white person, but we need to celebrate and not forget those that have paved the way. We are sitting in a building today that's an amazing building because 40 or 50 years ago, 3 or 4 Black people somewhere in Montreal said, we need a place to worship the Lord. You know, people come in here and they think, wow, this is really cool. They don't know where we came from. I'm standing or sitting here today because of a few Black people who came to this province in a time when it was not good to come. And they paid a price. And as long as I'm the lead pastor of this church, I will never forget the shoulders of the people that I stand on. And all of those people are Black. And I want to exhort and encourage the Black community that don't forget that you have a lot already that's been built. Let's take it to the next level and continue to build bricks on this thing until the house is fully built and we're not dealing with this. So your children don't have to. You're smiling, Bobby.
I am smiling.
Am I preaching?
You're preaching and you're saying great things. And because I know your heart, I'm smiling because I see the vision that you're laying out. And I
Okay.
think this is what's important in this conversation. This is why I'm smiling. Because these kind of conversations highlight the beauty of it. So what we're talking about is the good side.
Right.
The reality of it that makes this so much bigger and so much dangerous is that the sacrifices, those bricks, becomes bodies.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, that's not cool.
So one little lack of courage
Right.
becomes 3 bodies somewhere in Verdun or Lachine.
Okay.
Whether it's because of police brutality or black on black crime.
Right.
Whether it's because of poverty or whether it's because of lack of education. The ramifications are so large. I don't have the luxury to make a mistake.
Right.
Yeah.
If I take that position, I better not fail.
Yeah.
Right.
Because
Okay, I
'Cause I'll
understand.
be
you know
the
what I
last
mean?
one.
Because when you speak, for example, of the shoulders that you stand on, you're looking at it like we're doing this together. The shoulders, the soldiers that the society will build are actually shoulders of people, bodies being laid. The sacrifices are true blood. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like we have to see it more as for every JFK, there's like one Malcolm X, there's one MLK, there's one,
Okay.
and then there's others that separated them. In the civil rights movement, they had the responsibility to choose who was going to be in the narrative.
Right.
Yeah.
Rosa Parks was not an accident. We know that now. Everybody's comfortable with the story. Rosa Parks was not an accident. The fact that they chose her was not just because it happened this one time that this, African American lady wanted to
tired.
sit up front and
Yeah.
was tired. Yes, that's the narrative. But that narrative happens many times. They had tried to take another young woman before, but her lifestyle was not totally proper. So they were like, if we choose her, the message won't go as clearly. Let's choose Rosa Parks. And if you look at who she was, then it was really, and people were like, oh, she's a fine lady. She works at this store.
Right.
Oh, you know what? This civil disobedience is not too crazy after all. Because look at the narrative that they're doing right now with George Floyd. Well, what was his lifestyle? What was he
Of
doing
course.
before?
Of course.
So there is also that narrative of you can't mess up. You don't have the luxury to. And this larger narrative of the ramifications are large. So whether you mess up or not, lives are at stakes.
Yeah.
I understand.
The bricks that we're trying to lay are actual bodies now. And this is where the frustration comes. It's because in this dialogue, we would have hoped that it would be human sacrifice. Man, can I build up the courage? Yes, you can. Let's do it together. But it's more like, pa, 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 pa. Can I, pa, pa? I can't hear you. What? Pa, pa, pa. Duck, duck.
Right.
People are shooting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's just an example of just like what goes on in the real.
And
in the realness of it.
can I just add to that? I think that's another frustration that I just to attest to what Pastor Bobby is saying. I had this exact conversation with someone in relation to the protest because I'm for protesting, but I'm like, can we find a way to fight for Black lives without losing more Black lives? And I couldn't come up with any viable ways of fighting for the cause without putting more Black people at risk of dying.
Right.
There's always a cost. Yeah, those bricks are always bodies.
So that's where I think the invitation that you're doing when you make this invitation, that makes it so important but also delicate. You know what I mean? The people the people that are learning, okay, this is a door, this is a concept, there's gonna have to have this mercy aspect of they're not coming at this as I've always been treated as a human being. They're coming at this as I'm claiming humanhood, which is weird to do because if I'm a human, why do I have to claim it?
Right.
You know what I mean? So there is this is where the unsafety feeling, the unrest comes in. You know, this larger narrative of like, these are actual lives, you know? I don't know if
No, I get you.
if it relates to, yeah.
I can certainly understand what you're saying. Can I really relate? I'm not sure. Probably because of my white privilege.
Okay, yeah.
The same. I can't, I would need to talk another hour, I think, in order to understand the whole ramifications of it.
Yeah, and that's why I'm saying it will take years, because the dialogue has to be done to a lifetime, you know? Because there's a level where, you know, your quote unquote, your not quote unquote, your white privilege is not affecting our relationships, because we had time to.
You mean our relationship?
You and I, and
Yeah.
you and I, because we had time to encounter
Right.
each other.
I
know?
understand.
And
But the
I-
people watching this have not
I mean,
encountered
yeah,
that.
they're not aware of that, but society has to become this place, you know.
Right.
And this is where it becomes really important for us, even what we're doing here as the church, but just as human beings, to really understand that the true concept of equality comes when we reach this higher consciousness, level of consciousness, of understanding that we are human. There is one race.
Right.
The sanctity of life.
Amen, yeah.
You know? Because when we speak of these things, we understand that the goal is not to become equal to the slave master. If you're free from your chains, you should not want or wish to become like the slave master. Because the slave master was never human. Because a human does not enslave another human.
Right.
And this is what the mistake that has been going on with post-colonialism is, well, let me have what you have, and let me act like you act so I can become like
Sure,
you.
of course.
Which is no. The transformation comes from within, and you realize that if he was or if she was truly human, there would not be such thing as enslavement, you know? And I think God is calling us to do not see your equality to the slave master. Rise above that.
That's very good.
Into real, true humanhood.
Yes.
You know? And then our speech changes. We don't talk about the other. We talk about the neighbor.
That's very good.
You know? So that's how I think the larger narrative, you know, of the gospel really speaks to that, you know?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
I want to ask this question because you're talking about, essentially what you're saying is to go higher. I want to speak, I would like for you to take a moment to speak to people who are tired of going high. Because I think that a lot of people for a long time, we've known that that is not human behavior to enslave other people. And we know that, and we don't really want to be the same as that. A lot of us already have exceeded that understanding because we know that we're human, and we know that you're human, and we know we have that higher consciousness, but we're still being treated as less. And a lot of people who have been educated, who have achieved that feeling of the gospel, are now feeling that tension of, well, that's not working either. So what do you say to people who know better but no longer want to do better?
I think that the real mistake that's going on in your question is the fallacy of thinking that because I know what not to do, I'm aware of what to do. Okay. This is where education really comes in. I know what not to do, but that's not the goal. That's not going to get me to where I need to be or who I need to become. You know? So to these people, I would say, well, you're tired of not learning. Now what you need is proper education. Who are you truly? There's an education level, because when you discover what it really means to be a human being, I'm telling you, you discover this strength of, I do not need to celebrate. And I call it celebration of racism, because at some point you acknowledge it, at some point you start to celebrate it. It's like everything is about this one thing, and you see just the plight of it. But you never look at the injustice. And this is where, if we keep the conversation at this level, we limit the potential of being human beings.
Right.
This is really why I believe MLK was assassinated. Because his next move was no longer about civil rights when it comes to people of color, or the African American society. He was talking about poverty. He was just like, wait a second, there's even more going on. If you think this is bad, that they treat us bad because of our color, they do worse. They treat you bad because of what you have and what you don't have.
Absolutely.
So then he was going to start talking about poverty. At this level, people were just like, no, wait.
Yeah.
We need to kill this because you can have a couple of African Americans going to school and all, and people can, but now you're going to affect wealth? The last time somebody did that, even when we killed him, because the message was so deep, a whole empire fell. That man was Jesus. And we accepted it because he came with divine power and we couldn't stop him. You know, but when you look at the Roman Empire, the life of Jesus was pivotal.
Absolutely.
And it was pivotal because he was not going against the religious system. He was going after everything that speaks against humanhood, everything that speaks against seeing the imago Dei, the image of God in the neighbor.
Amen.
Which is important, the image of God in the neighbor, not the other.
Right.
The
In the
neighbor.
neighbor.
So then it humbles everybody.
Yeah.
Even when they killed him, the empire fell. Now you want to do that and do like his disciples? You're not, we're not, no, we're not doing that again. It's better for one man to die than all the people perish.
Right.
But the roots of these trees are deep and the trees are growing. And
I know that both of you work within the black community with youth. Not all of the youth community is black that you work with, but the majority are. How can we open the door and have a better dialogue to help youth today to feel more accepted, appreciated, and maybe giving fair opportunities within our communities?
want to go first?
I mean, I could. Do you want to go?
Yeah,
first?
I think
Yes,
you should
because-
go first.
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, personally, the way that you said about unequal opportunities?
Equal opportunities.
Equal opportunities. Can you repeat the whole question again?
I was asking, with you both work within youth,
Yes.
and how can we do a better job in engaging our youth, helping them to
Yeah.
feel more accepted,
Yeah.
giving fair opportunities within our communities?
What I have been focusing the most on is dealing with the framework of the self. So as much as I acknowledge their pain and as much as I acknowledge the fact that what's happening is not fair, and to reinforce to them that God actually cares about them and that God is not pleased with this,
Right.
is I try to encourage them to see themselves differently because of that framework that we were talking about. Because that framework creates, the empowers imposter syndrome. It empowers, lower living. It empowers a lot of things. And so I'm trying to encourage them, you need to, and I could be wrong in this, but what I've been doing is encouraging them. You need to fight this personally by becoming your best self.
Okay.
You need to make sure you're doing well in school. You need to make sure that you're seeing yourself as worthy. You need to make sure that you're treating yourself as worthy, that your lifestyle and your behavior reflect that of which is someone who is human. You know what I mean? Do not live at the standard that some people are trying to sell you is what you should be as a black person. And, I've been teaching them that the response to racism is black excellence from you.
Okay.
I don't know if you would agree with that, Pastor Bobby, but it's really difficult to tell someone that's young and angry to understand how white people feel. Mm-hmm. It's very difficult to tell young people who are in pain, you know what I mean? And I don't even know if there's ever a place for that or when that place becomes appropriate. But just hearing their pain, acknowledging that they're not wrong, and giving them something that they feel like they can do to safeguard themselves against that racism. Because I can't control what other people look at them as, but I can change their lens of how they see themselves to make sure that when opportunities do come, to make sure that when conversations do come, that they address it in a way where they go high rather than stooping to the level of not acting like a human.
Right.
You know what I mean? Which is that whole racist, racially charged conversation that leads everywhere and nowhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I've been doing personally.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with this whole, I think in adolescence is a beautiful time to discover more about the self. I think it's during that time where you get the best opportunity to really, and the freedom really to explore who you are. I think the groundwork that I've been doing is one of celebration of heritage, you know, and when I mean heritage, because I'm in ecclesial, like I'm in a church, so in my context, I celebrate the heritage when it comes to the ethnicity of each one of them, but also the heritage of the faith. You know, what does it mean to be Christian? How do you celebrate being a Christian within this world? You know, it is my conviction really that through that they're able to find emancipation, you know, from a more spiritual perspective. I think on a larger scale, if we are to address more and just the youth in general outside of the church, with the people with whom I work, the main things that we've been focusing on is mostly things like the action, you know, how to get involved. You know, it's one way to teach someone that they are worthy, or to tell someone in speech, you know, this is your neighbor. But it's another thing when you get involved and you start cleaning a park.
Right.
You know, then it really becomes discovery. I clean a park because this is where we live, and we should care about where we live.
Ownership.
You know,
Yeah,
yes,
ownership.
it celebrates this ownership and this neighborhood. You know, so yeah, and I think doing these things, not being afraid to not being afraid to take it step by step. This is a learning time. You know, and as adolescents grow and discover more, they'll ask different questions, just like we all do, and we're still doing. You know,
And I'm sure we'll continue to do.
exactly. So yeah.
Yeah.
These are really the things: working on discipline and working really on actions. Do and think.
I'm sure that we've all heard recently, just this week, our premier here in Quebec said that there is no systematic racism in Quebec. Our prime minister said that we definitely had this problem within Quebec. So I would like for you to address that. How do you feel when, as a politician, as a lead in a local city, how are you viewing these kind of statements, and how does that make you feel?
I believe that there's
Okay.
definitely is racism, systemic racism within our society. We don't all understand and talk to each other as much as we should. I
Right.
think knowing each other and being more of neighbors is important. Joining, doing things together, you know, there's still a lot of segregation. Yeah. So I think we have a long way to go, and I think to address that there is a problem, there's nothing, maybe some people are, I don't want to, won't. But I think it's important to address there's an issue, and we're going to deal with the issue. And I think the image of the neck, like going back to, I couldn't see the video. I just saw the image, the horrible image. Like it's our vulnerable part, our most
Yes.
vulnerable part. It's
Yeah.
the symbol.
Right.
It's the neck. And so I think I'm not black, but I am a Slav. And Slavs have been persecuted during the Second World War by the Nazis. Millions were killed. Millions. So I am Vodanovich. I'm not French. I did feel some form of I'm not, I'm not Tremblay. I'm not
Right.
Madame Tremblay. So I do,
Right.
but as an immigrant, I always felt, well, it's part of coming here. It's part of what I have to go through, and I can't even imagine what you're feeling. And I will just tell you that I had war in my country. We had like Muslims, Christians, and Orthodox in former Yugoslavia. And there was a war. And I saw people here the pain I felt was so strong to see that on TV when people spoke my own language and they were being killed for their religion.
Yeah.
I thought, my God, how I thought I felt pain for something else. Like I feel pain for that neck, like I do.
Okay.
but it's not the same when it's your people, like when you identify to you know, it's very different. So I can't even imagine, you know, I know that I can't know exactly how you feel. I can only try to understand. And I have no right to speak for it. Like when people were speaking, like here in Montreal, when there was the war going on in Sarajevo, I had artists, you know, like my fellow friends, you know, were doing exhibitions, Sarajevo and the war and how horrible it is. And I was like, how dare you? You don't know how it feels. Like, I can't say that I know because I'm not there, you know, and I feel pain. And how do you, like, it's very hard to, so I really think that change will come when you are part of the system. Because even if I want to help, I will never help as much if you are on the margins. You have to come inside. You have to be part of the police force. You have to rise up in the ranks. You have to be part of the fireman department. You have to be part of the education system. You have to, you know, you just have to, and I know the doors are probably not as open, but they are. You can knock, you know, like you have the right. And I know that for our political party, I can tell you for sure the doors are open. And maybe I'm going all over the place.
It's okay.
But I went all over the place.
It's okay
but
for the conversation to be fluid. It's okay.
Yeah, but no, I definitely there is, and I can even confess that it wasn't an issue that I was so much interested in. You know, there was a commission on systemic racism in Montreal that was brought about by 22,000 signatures. The report is out. It'll be public in a couple of weeks. And we can all read it. And there will be recommendations in there. And recommendations, and for the whole city. You know, so, but I didn't go to the hearings. I didn't go, and I had other stuff to do, running the city, doing this, doing that. And I think, wow, you know.
We're all guilty
we're all guilty of not
these things.
You know, now this happens, and now I'm here. How dare I? You know, where was I before?
Yeah.
You know, but better to be here now than never.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I think you got to be careful with that internal dialogue because you can't be everywhere all the time, especially as leaders and even as a pastor. I often feel like, well, what fire am I supposed to work on now?
Yeah.
So I think you got to be careful with that because you can't be involved in every single issue. But when it comes to something like this and with racism, it's being highlighted right now. And I hope that we put a systems in place where we can reverse the stuff that's been done.
And housing is important.
Housing.
And we're working on housing.
Yes.
And like our party put like the 20-20-20 thing that's where we want more family, larger apartments to be built and more economical apartments to be built because it's a huge lack, and it's not just Montreal, it's Quebec and the federal money gave 50 billion and it's still not down on the ground, you know, it's still not being used. So we're fighting for that, and we're fighting for inclusion and no prejudice. Like we passed something, all the organizations, we don't want, there's a lot of vulnerable people in Lachine and they're not being treated properly. We know, we get feedback, you know, so we want more inclusion. But I mean, that's all just policies. That's
It's never just
you know,
policies.
it's just
I have a question.
Yes, you can ask a question.
You had mentioned that there's policies in place. How does a person from a minority group that have experienced this level of injustice when it comes to housing, for example, as we just spoke about, what are the measures that they should go about when those policies are not being adhered to make sure that they actually get the justice that they should have in that issue and with that situation?
Yeah. I don't know the steps that you have to follow. What I'm doing now is that to make sure that apartments are built, because there's not enough apartments around, you know. So there's injustice, not just for the Black community. There's 40,000 people on a waiting list, you know, 40,000 people. So, you know, we're all the same, right?
Yeah.
We're all human. Like there's a lot of, but I don't know. But that specific question I can't answer because I don't know enough. It was not like I'm for the environment and for the plastic pollution. Boy, plastic pollution is now like, you know, there's COVID. There's, you know, there's so much, there's so many issues, you know, and it was not. And I'm very grateful to be here to start being more aware.
Right. How are we doing as a local bureau here in Lachine with regards to COVID-19? I know it's off topic a little
We're-
bit, but it's
well,
very
It's good.
important.
It's relevant.
But we're
You're very relevant. Yeah.
we're just a bit over the average on amounts of people with COVID positive for 100,000 people.
Okay.
And there's actually going to be a clinic at Dove Court next
Okay.
week.
Okay.
Wow.
So
Good.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you can just go and get tested.
Wow.
So I think that should be out there and people
Yeah.
should know.
So you want to just give us that information again?
Sure.
Just
Oh,
look
we
at
never- I never
look at
really
the camera
looked at
right
that
there
camera.
and
Yes.
and tell the people where they need to go for
There's going to be
this.
a clinic in Dove Court. I think it's going to be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. You can go even if you don't have symptoms. If you're worried about having it, you can go and get yourself tested and you get the results the next day. And talk to your friends about it. Talk to
Next day?
your neighbors. Tell them, yeah. Don't go too close to them, but tell them they should go and get tested if they're worried.
So only if they're worried. It's not like if you have no symptoms, you shouldn't really go get tested unless you have some level
Well,
of
let's
concern.
say if you went out and you met a whole bunch of people and you didn't wear a mask
Right.
and it's like,
Okay.
maybe I should go and on that point, it's still out there. Even though the government is deconfining, it's still out there. So if your children are playing on a playground that's open or going to the pool this summer, they can still get it. So you have to wash your hands and do the social distancing. Wear a mask in a store.
Right.
Very important.
Yeah. Is there any other things that you would like to speak to the community about
I would-
as we come to the end of our sessions?
I would just like you to join us more, like to be part of it, to come to city council sometimes, to ask questions, one woman came once, asked a question. I know who she is. We still kind of have contact on Facebook, but things didn't go through, things. So I would love to have more of a feedback. And we've started this conversation, and I really want it to continue. So if you want things to change, well, you have to talk. Talk to me, talk to the other officials of your community, the politicians. They're there for that. They're there to represent you. But if you don't talk to them, if you don't tell them what your needs are, then we can't represent you properly. We don't know. We get people who come to us are people who want a stop sign in front of their house, people who
Right.
want, those are the people who feel justified to come. But you're just as justified to come for other reasons, So that's the message I want to give you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you even for just being here today. It's such a blessing for us to be able to host you and for you to be on our stage.
Thank you for having me very much. Thank you.
Yeah. I actually do have one other question. That's with regards to our police force. Is there any kind of extra special training for our policemen, our police officers, how to help our black community? Because I do talk to some of the police officers, and they really want to engage the community.
Yes.
So, but there's still that issue that's going on between the policemen and the black community. How could we help navigate and bring the two together?
They have now installed more training for them to understand certain issues, and there's also there are guidelines for them.
Okay.
And I want to make sure that everyone knows that in Minneapolis, 30% of the income of a city taxes go into police. 30%.
30%.
30%. In Montreal, it's 10%.
Really?
And
10%?
10%.
Okay.
And which is a lot. And we're
Right.
getting people saying, no, we don't want you to invest that much in the police force.
Right.
Invest in community services, in
Right.
people who can help with vulnerability, with mental health, mental issues. And the police also want this because the police are saying, when we are called, oftentimes it's mental illness,
Right.
it's homelessness, it's sadness, it's human sadness.
Right.
It's not up to the police to intervene. It's really up to people who have a psychological background.
I understand.
And for this, Montreal is asking the Quebec government to give us more money to hire people that have this knowledge and this competence, not necessarily someone wearing a gun, someone
Right.
who understands, because that is the reality on the terrain.
Right.
And I know a lot of the police in Montreal, they deal with family violence. You know, so that it's not just anyways. So that's
Yeah.
yeah. So
For
this
sure.
is what we're
Right.
doing.
Well, when you're talking about that, you're not actually talking about defunding the police department, though, that we're not going to have a police department.
No.
Because I was watching the news before early this morning, and I can't remember exactly, but there was a very high percentage of the states in the U.S. that were saying that there's this outcry now that people want the police departments to be defunded.
I think this is the greatest email campaign we've seen. We've gotten over 100. I've stopped counting, but over 100 emails, definitely.
Right.
Maybe 150 now, 200, of different people sending
Right.
us, asking us mainly to defund the police, to remove 300 million, I think, no, 300
Okay.
million from the budget. But of course, I look at the police in Lachine that come when there's family violence,
Right.
when there's women being beaten.
Right.
I want them to be there.
Yes,
I want
of
them to
course.
be able to help. And another big difference in Montreal is that there's a 3-year training. There's 3 years of education to become a policeman, plus
Really?
training.
Okay.
And in the States, it's a couple of months.
Right.
So there's a very big difference, you know. So yes, we're not perfect. The SPVM is not perfect. They acknowledge it.
Sure.
They want to fix things.
Yes.
But I think, again, the main thing is be part of the police. You know, if there's more black people within the police,
Sure.
they can talk to their mates. And then they learn that they're neighbors. They're not just this other. They're, hey, my buddy, you know.
Closer.
You were closer. Yeah. And then you will educate and say, well, no, we got to take it this way. And, you know, we got to do it another way. So that's, and I can't speak for you, but
Of course.
I wish you were not afraid.
Can I also say something to that?
Of course.
I think that it's important that we have more black officers, more black police officers, but there's something that kind of doesn't sit with me well, and it's the reality that even if we have more black police officers, will the training and like we were talking about safe space, right?
Yeah.
Will they feel safe enough to fight, to have that voice in that space? Or will they feel like they'll have to muzzle their voice in order to be accepted or treated fairly or equally amongst their white police counterparts? So that's a concern for me. And so what I'm thinking is, we're talking about training and reform. Can we have, or would it be possible to put on the table maybe some policy reform on how things are backed up so that the training that they're given is ensured to be put into place?
Yes. They're looking at now certain bylaw changes that allow the police to intervene. You know, when they come in, let's say there's a loitering by policy, you know, bylaw. So if they see somebody just hanging around, the police can intervene.
Right.
And of course, then that allows them to intervene in a black community where people are just maybe sitting around talking.
Yeah.
You know, so those kinds of things are being looked at as
Okay.
bylaws, that we change
Okay.
the law so that they can't do that.
Okay. Thank you.
But you have to, you know, you have to be, sometimes you have to be in, even though it's
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like the sacrifice
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
We all have a part to play.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
it's got to reframe the narrative to be able to really frame the power. Like,
Yeah.
listen, you're empowered to do this, but only when it comes to that.
Exactly. Reframe it. Yeah. And there's another thing that I think everyone should be aware of is that before police met, the police, the city of Montreal hires the police. They work for the mayor of Montreal, right? So they have, it's like the boss, right? The big boss is the mayor of Montreal. So they have to rendre des comptes, be accountable.
Yeah.
You know? And before they would come and be accountable in a closed room. They had a closed
Okay.
door, little discussion, this and that, stamped, okay, go do your job.
Right.
Since we are in power, there was Alex Norris, which is a counselor from Le Plateau. He decided, former journalist, followed a lot of what happened in the world, you know, and in Montreal. And he said, well, this has to change. The culture of police has to change. And he decided that the commissions were going to be public, and there was going to be at least 10 during the year, filmed.
Wow.
Journalists were allowed in,
Okay.
and citizens were allowed in.
Okay.
Anybody could come in and ask. There was a question period.
Yeah, that's accountability.
10 sessions minimum.
That's huge.
That's
Yeah.
that's
And you-
great.
that is something. And you
Yeah.
can ask a question on any topic. It doesn't have to be on the topic that's being discussed.
Wow.
Yeah, it can't be personal,
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
I
But it's
got
Sure.
hit or whatever.
Yeah.
But if it's of a common interest,
Yeah.
you're allowed to go and ask your question. So that is a huge
It is.
change. So that allows you to have a voice.
Yeah.
And that also it creates, it's not an easy conversation, but it's a
But it's
conversation.
true monitoring because
It's
I mean, like 10 a year. there's
10 a
12
year
months.
minimum. We've had
You know?
more, but it was 10 a year.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they did treat systemic racism. They treated, that was one of the commissions.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I would love to just ask a final question, or maybe two, and
Yeah.
to all three of you. I'd love to hear all three responses. As a pastor and as somebody who is faith-based and running a church, how can the church, the institutional church, and then the local church better serve our community locally for Maya, and then the black community? How can the local church serve the black community better than what we've been doing?
So I would say that the church has, and not only historically, but as a heritage, we truly have what it takes, that true power. Now, I am talking spiritually, which is important. But on a higher level, we have the language. Now, I'm going on both. If you look at it from a spiritual perspective and also just from a secular perspective, we have the language of reconciliation. The Bible actually says that that's our ministry. We have the ministry of reconciliation. You know?
yes.
And in this ministry of reconciliation, we're calling all people to be reconciled to God. So just this relationship that the church has where it's unifying, it's supposed to see itself as unified, looking at God, and God being the only one that is truly other. But we call him holy, not other. We call him holy because he doesn't want to be separated from us. He's other, but he doesn't want to be separated from us. So he's holy because his person and who he is invites us in, but we cannot totally grasp him as much as he grasps us. So we have this message. We have this revelation. Matter of fact, we are this revelation to mankind. We call ourselves the salt of the earth. You know, we proclaim to be the light. You know, and when we proclaim this in our text, in our ancient text, what we meant was not only like the light to see in the darkness. We actually meant the actual word wisdom. You know, like in this Greek sense. So I truly believe that our mandate is to be true to ourselves, because we are actually the institution that is made to represent what human beings are supposed to be. You know, this not acceptance, but total love. The capacity to just love.
Wow.
You know, and this is why I really believe that if we preach this message, you will see the true transformation. You know, it will not only be about race reconciliation, it will truly be about what does it truly mean, this experience that we have on earth. We won't waste time on questions like that. We're not wasting time right now because these we have to factor in and we have to deal with. But the truth is that we are called to way more. You know, the why, the purpose of life has to be more than just what am I going to leave behind and what am I getting. You know, it has to be this constant encounter and engagement. And you don't do that with a conversation. You do that with the spirit. You do that with the soul. You know, it's these deep moments where you don't have to say something to someone, but you're in the same place and you know what the person's thinking, and you're so comfortable that you don't talk, but you said a lot. Right. These are holy moments. Right. We are bearers of holy moments. We bring holy moments. So if these holy moments, become part of our experience every day, our movement through space, so that's our time, then our life becomes these holy moments. Then the church really becomes this institution that brings about these holy moments. Now his kingdom is made on earth. And I think that that's what we're better of, and that's what we have to stay true to,
Right. Shannon, would you like to add to that?
I would like to add to that. Not that I that was an amazing answer. But I think that for people who do not necessarily have the concept of what Pastor Bobby is saying, I think what a lot of them want to see is acknowledgement.
Okay.
And I think that, Pastor Bobby, you were talking about bringing those holy moments and having those moments where we're both sitting in the room and we're not saying anything, but we understand. And I think that could only come when there's understanding. And
True
I think we
encounter.
can only have understanding when we have true encounters, and to have true encounters, we need honesty.
Yeah.
And I think the problem is that there's not a lot of people telling the truth. There's not a lot of people acknowledging white privilege. There's not a lot of people acknowledging, hey, you know what I mean, I'm part of the problem, or hey, I'm sorry that I never had that moment of reckoning with how I have contributed or have lived in this privilege.
Right.
And it's important for the church to not stay silent
That's right.
as people ache in pain
Right.
and then turn around and call us brothers and sisters.
Right.
I could never see my sister in pain and not feel anything.
That's right.
And I think that what the church can do for their Black community is feel.
Right.
And if you don't feel, seek to understand. And while you're understanding, please do not preach. While you're understanding, don't judge. Just sit and have this holy moment with me,
Okay.
where we lament together,
Yeah.
where we understand together, where
right.
there is a silence to revere my pain.
Amen.
Because sometimes when you don't understand and you speak, you subdue. And I don't need that power dynamic to come into this holy moment. And so for me as a Black Christian woman who has to feel the pressure of being a Christian and Black, which is a whole nother conversation that we don't need to get into right now.
Right.
But when I look at my church, I need to feel that solace because I've chosen to bear pain here. And that's really important because I don't necessarily always have a right to certain things out there because I've chosen to believe. And so I need that solace from in here.
Right.
And so that's what I'll say on that.
Excellent. Thank you. And Maya, how can we serve the community better?
Wow. I have to say that the love part, God and love, and I also have to say, I almost feel unfaithful, but I go, because I'm a politician, I'm a Christian, but I go to many different churches.
It's okay.
And I understand other people as well. Like,
Yes,
I
yes.
go to a
It's
mosque
fine.
and I go to the synagogue and I go to Presbyterian.
Sure.
I see different, and to me, it's all the same because it's all about love and respect and brotherhood and trying to just where you're born and who it's not a, I don't. Anyways, I'm sorry about
You don't
that.
need
but
to
me,
feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, to me,
It's
when I
encounter.
talk about
Yeah.
God, to
Yeah,
me,
it's
it's a spiritual force. That's something beyond us. It's something beyond us. Something we aspire to. Something that connects us. It's a spiritual force, and I think we are called to serve. And I think that's like if I as a politician, I want, and that's why I'm saying I don't feel as an imposter because I'm doing the same thing I've done in my whole life. As a mother, I'm like a mom. You serve, you take care of your kids, you take care of your community, you
Yes.
take care of others, you take care of who's in need, and we're all the same in that. We
Yeah.
all do that on different levels with different techniques, right? So I think the church can create these moments of bringing us together, of talking about true things. What is being human?
Yeah.
What is being human? What is a race? Are we all one human race? How do we, those touching the true elements of what makes us the same.
Yeah.
I think that is so important, bringing us together and not dividing us.
Yeah.
And on a more concrete basis, I would like to say that the fact that the church is giving out food right now for COVID while we have this crisis, you are one of the main supporters of the community of Lachine, giving out warm meals and giving out food baskets. Incredibly grateful. And I want to tell you that I spoke to, we have a meeting, where we say, who do we give money, and with Centraide, and Centraide said that you are, in Lachine, you are the only one who takes care of the Black community.
Wow.
You are the only one.
Wow.
The only organization to do so. And they said, give him the money.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's huge.
So
That's huge.
So I
That's
thank
huge.
you. Yeah.
Well,
That's
you're
huge.
kindly welcome. And really, the thanks should go to all of the people that are actually watching, because what we do here is not about me or Glennis, but it's about the people that God brings here week after week and the people that support this ministry. And we are so grateful for all of the Resurrection Center family. Resurrection Center family, we love you and appreciate you so much. Thank you, by the way. Let me say this. Thank you for accepting me, accepting my family. Because the truth is, you don't have to. But you did. And each and every day, I have this amazing, amazing gift to be surrounded with people who fulfill the mission and the mandate to love, to connect, and to serve every single day. You give Glennis and I purpose to get up every morning and to fight for what we believe in. And I want to make sure that everyone that's watching understands what we believe in. We believe in Jesus Christ. And we believe that He created all of us equally. And what we do here on the earth is going to determine what will take place after we're gone. And we want to make sure that everyone is clear, everyone understands that God didn't die for white people or black people. He died for humanity. And that's the message here, that we love, that we connect, and that we serve. We thank you guys so much.
It was such a pleasure. It was great.
Thank you, Shannon, Bobby, Maya. It's been truly, truly a blessing. And I believe and I hope that the people that watch this are also absolutely blessed. Did you guys want to say anything before we sign off?
I would like to say something.
Sure.
I just wanted to say, like, on behalf of not only the members of this church, but especially like the young people who are looking to see who cares about me. Thank you for being instrumental in showing them that there's action behind your words.
Yes.
In showing them that people that don't look like us still love us and will still fight for us and are still willing to be uncomfortable to fight for our comfort.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It is very important and instrumental in maintaining our hope in this world and in our God and in our belief and in our faith. And I really appreciate you, and I want to say thank you for that.
You make it very easy.
Just saying.
Thank you all so much. Thank you, Bobby. God bless you guys. Thank you. See you next week, ladies and gentlemen. God bless you.